Philip, Kathleen, Jeff, J-Trig, Shiny Joe, Minnesunda, Seeker, K-Woman, and Korvev in the way back behind Shiny Joe. Okay, in the front row we have Sun Valor. In the second row we have Paige on the left and Loritz in the middle. The third row, left to right, is Lariel and Kiwi. The back row, left to right, is Lutra, Susan, Dr. Chris Gare AH, Marcel, Squabi, Nikki May, Technotron, Omeon, Caver, and Cave Woman. Tonight's story is brought to you in part by MissLore.com for some of the history, DPWR.net for the Denis dates, UruArchives.com for the surface history corresponding to the Denis dates, and the Covernian Calendar Converter, which was written by Brett Middleton of the Fuzzy Physics Institute for converting between Denis and surface time. Tonight's story is from Myst, the Book of Atris. As I've told these stories, we've learned about life in the cavern. We learned how the Denis came from their proud roots, seeking to shed their pride, yet pride crept back into their lives. We watched it cause the downfall of their great empire. We watched as a mother and her young son made their way to the surface from the ruins of Denis. A mother, Anna, grieving for the loss of her soulmate, and her son, Gen, angry at his mother for, he believed, leaving his father behind. We learned about Gen's adolescent life and his all-consuming anger towards his mother for what he perceived as her part in the fall of Denis and in his father's death. Basically, she was the root cause of his world having fallen apart. Instead of being patient, he was impatient, choosing easy paths even though they may not be the correct ones. Where his paths would become blocked, he chose to use brute force to overcome his obstacles rather than use reason and logic. We learned of his son, Atris, and of Adnan's second attempt to raise a good and decent child, teaching him to be observant of his surroundings, even of the bad things that occur as a result of his experiments. We learned how, when Atris was 14 years old, his father returned to the cleft to take him to Denis, where Gen intended to use Atris as an assistant, together writing ages to rebuild what Gen had perceived as the glory of Denis. We learned of Atris' first trek to Denis and the beginnings of his lessons from Gen on how ages are created. Last time, we saw the first of many confrontations between father and son, from Gen's refusal to let him go back to the cleft to visit Anna. This week, we will learn about one of Gen's ages and Atris' realization of the relationship between the words written in an age's descriptive book and the end result. Tonight's story opens in the Denis year of 9425, approximately 1769 A.D., the year that Napoleon Bonaparte was born, James Watt patented the steam engine, and Daniel Boone first saw the woodlands of present-day Kentucky. We left our hero, Atris, being locked inside his room by his father, Gen. Atris was disappointed by Gen's refusal to let him visit with his grandmother, Anna.
In a poorly thought-out moment of striking back at his father's feelings, he blurted out that Anna had taught him more than his father, and had even taught him Denis. Atrus did not realize that his father was a man of action rather than words. The two things that Gen was short on were words and patience. Atrus had not spent sufficient time with him to learn what an unforgiving brute his father had allowed himself to become, and so Gen locked his son in his room as punishment. It was a busy 3 months for the young lad. He had seen the deep city, explored its ancient paths, and learned of its heritage. He started to grow closer to his estranged father, and in an instant a poor misjudgment created a small rift, a rift that would only grow over time as Gen's true nature became more and more evident. Atrus was locked in his room for 3 days when his father came to talk. It was strained. Gen was adamant that Atrus not be allowed to see Anna again, ever. Atrus was crushed at the thought. However, Gen had had time to think through Atrus's deception. After considering it carefully, he came to the realization that Atrus' knowledge of Denis would be of great benefit. Gen could proceed more rapidly with his plans. There were, however, 2 conditions to which Atrus must acknowledge. First, there must be no further deception. Gen was the master, and his word would be law. Second, they would only speak Denis from that moment forward. In return, Atrus would be allowed to write his very own book. His own book, Atrus thought to himself. Over the next 3 years, Gen took Atrus with him to visit the various ages he had created. The latest one was age 37. Atrus noted that the age was named with his father's usual pragmatism. It was the 37th age that Gen had written. The age was basically an island, surrounded by a wall of white mist and very strong ocean currents close to the mist wall. Gen had a particular task for Atrus. Giving him a notebook, he asked Atrus to observe the age. He also gave his son a book with a few of the phrases from this age's descriptive book. The people of this age were a simple folk, their meager existence coming from fishing in their lagoon and basic agriculture. They all referred to Gen as their master and deferred to him as if he were a god in the flesh. He commanded them that they treat Atrus in the same manner. During his time on age 37, Atrus noticed that there were a couple of islands on his father's map of this age that were no longer there. In addition, a large crevasse opened up in the earth. Atrus was very diligent in his own observations, and in comparing the few phrases from the age's descriptive book with the resulting landscape. His father told him repeatedly that they were creating the worlds in their descriptive books. The more time Atrus spent here, the less he was sure that he believed that. One particular day, he went out on a fishing boat with a man named Tarkuk, the owner, and his son, Virili. While they were out there, Atris asked that they take him to the mist wall. Both the man and his son were reluctant, but Atris insisted. Fearing Gen, they complied with the son's wishes. As they approached the mist wall, the wind died down, and they got caught in the strong current. The man and his son became very afraid, dropped to their knees, and began to pray. It was all that Atris could do to exhort them to stand up, take the oars, and row. With the three of them straining on the oars, they were able to eventually break free of the currents. In talking with the men later, he found out that the villagers had worshipped the mist wall before Gen came to their world. The mist wall had been their god. It appeared that they and the rest of the villagers felt that they had, quote, cheated, close quote, the mist wall, which they referred to as the whiteness. Atris realized right off why the mist was in existence in the first place. The island must have been sitting on a pocket of geothermal energy, making the lagoon's water warm. The surrounding ocean, especially close to the whiteness, was ice cold, and the mist was created at the confluence of the warm and cold waters. Meanwhile, Gen was pondering why some phrases worked to create certain features in an age, and some did not. It was unfortunate that the secrets to writing ages was passed on from the Grand Masters by word of mouth, and not by written word, a fact that was very frustrating to Gen. When Gen returned to the age, Atris told him of his observations. Gen became angry at the villagers' superstitions regarding the whiteness. He wanted to be the only god that they worshipped. He then made some changes to the age and directed the villagers' attention to the whiteness. It was gone. Later, Atris asked his father if he could move from Kavir to age 37, including his laboratory, to make better observations. Gen refused to allow Atris to remain alone and unsupervised. However, he agreed to allow the laboratory to be built and allow frequent trips by Atris. Well, at least that was something, Atris thought. For you see, Gen had all but given up on this age and was ready to let it deteriorate completely. It was in the beginning throes of becoming unstable. While lying in his bed that night, Atris was pondering age 37. He then realized what it was that his father had done to make the whiteness disappear. He made the ocean warm. Please join us next time as we learn about Atris's first age and Gen's arrogance that brings about the eventual destruction to a world. The end. And thank you all for listening to this story.
And time to end the story right now.